Welcome to the Transformative Neurotherapy Podcast with your host, Dr. Heather Putney, founder and executive director of Transformative Neurotherapy. This is the place where healing happens faster. Because let's face it, your brain doesn't come with an owner's manual until now. Here, we take a holistic approach to brain health, bringing together science, mind-body harmony, and the tools you need to optimize your well-being. Whether you're a high performer, executive, athlete, longevity hacker, or just someone tired of your brain working against you, Dr. Putney is here to help you unlock your full potential. From brain fog to chronic stress, we're covering it all so you can finally experience brain health, mind harmony, and total well-being. Ready to get unstuck? Let's get started.
Discover how innovative brain-based therapies can unlock new pathways for learning and growth. Welcome, everyone. I'm Julie Schwenzer, co-host and producer in the studio with Dr. Heather Putney, the founder and executive director of Transformative Neurotherapy. Dr. Heather, it's always a pleasure to join you.
Thank you. Same here.
Thank you. Today, we are diving into a really important topic. How does neurotherapy help with learning disabilities?
Yeah, we actually work with this quite a bit. Learning disabilities is something that comes into the office usually as a comorbid disorder, meaning it's mixed in with some of the other presenting disorders that we see. So we see it a lot with ADHD, where they will have ADHD plus a couple of different learning disorders or disabilities. With autism spectrum, that you also see a lot of overlap there, but also just some of the other mental health conditions. Anybody could have depression or anxiety. We see there's a lot of anxiety overlap with learning disabilities as well. So we see this a lot, but like I said, usually we're not the first thing that people think of to go to for learning disabilities. That a lot of times they'll be like coaching and tutoring and other things like that. And what's interesting is, even though we're not what people I think of as the first go-to, it's really amazing what we can do with learning disabilities. So all the coaching and all of the tutoring in the world doesn't necessarily strengthen your brain's ability to process information. The more you repeat, it does get a little bit better. But if the issue has to do with networks not communicating well, or some of the regions of the brain that decode language, or parts like dyscalculia, the parts that decode numbers and the ability to process numbers, if those regions of the brain just are not communicating effectively or running as quickly as we'd like them to, then it just doesn't work as well. So one of the most amazing things is just the ability to kind of speed up and, enhance those areas so that they function better. And when they function better, then all of a sudden the kid's able to do the thing, or the tutoring that they may have to go back and, learn something that they missed, but their ability to catch on increases like that. So one of the things that we do when we're working with some of these kiddos is while they're actually doing the neurotherapy treatment, depending on whatever the learning disability we're working with, we'll actually have them bring some exercises that relate to the subject. So, and what happens is while we are actually doing the treatment, and for about 90 minutes after the treatment, we're increasing blood flow, the oxidation and neurogenesis in those areas and so forth, and also reducing any kind of inflammation. And it has about a lasting effect. So while it's happening, obviously during the treatment, while we're sending the energy into the brain, but it also has this kind of glow effect afterwards for 90 minutes. So their ability to learn during that session increases. So if we have them getting the treatment and then also practicing the thing that they struggle with, it will help them. It'll be like a double whammy. It's a win-win. So, you can have them, bring a book and read out loud, with the technician while they're sitting there, the therapist while they're sitting there, or their parent can sit there. The cool thing about neurotherapy is that it's a passive treatment. They just, need to let the brain, receive the energy, the stimulation that we're doing, but then they can be doing an activity while they're doing that. So it's really cool to kind of maximize that impact to to help out with with the learning.
And have you noticed patients with certain types of learning disabilities being more responsive or having, a quicker success rate when it comes to the neurotherapy treatment, or is it just depending on the actual client or patient?
It really depends on the client or patient, and it's really just depends on what we're treating. So, sometimes the client or patient may have a learning disability or something like that. And if they have metabolic issues or if they have any kind of toxicity issues, maybe they have Lyme's or a black mold exposure or some sort of environmental thing that is also compromising their brain, they are going to respond slower than, a client that's got really great energy, but just has a little bit of slowing in that region. So there's not a specific learning disability that responds better than another per se, but it really just depends on that client's brain, how impaired the brain is, and whatnot. We tend to see with learning disabilities, there can be two or three different ways. I mean, you've got a genetic component that can be part of it. There could be some environmental factors. It can be also an injury. So they used to have it. It can be an acquired learning disability. So a traumatic brain injury, a mold toxicity, and like I said, Lyme's or something. Like sometimes these things can kind of create issues in the brain. And so they lose abilities that they used to have, and we have to kind of rehab them. Or sometimes, like I said, it's just more of a genetic predisposition. It's something that they struggle with developmentally from the get-go. And so then in those situations, we're, coaching the brain to something it hasn't done. In other situations, we're rehabbing the brain to something it used to be able to do, but lost the ability, if that makes sense.
Yes. And are there any success stories that you'd like to share in particular regarding one patient?
Sure. Yeah, I'm thinking about a client that had ADHD and also some autism features. They weren't officially diagnosed with autism, but they had some autism features, but they also had dyslexia. And the student, I think when she came in, she was in like second or third grade, and she was just in the really lower reading levels at school. And she felt a lot of, embarrassment, but she also experienced a ton of frustration, and she was just really avoidant to do the homework that the parents had assigned or were assigned, to the parents. She would, have meltdowns when the parents would try to do the homework with her because it was so challenging for her. Her brain just did not want to process the information well. And like I said, she would also feel embarrassed about it. And so we were working with her. We saw, some difficulties in the temporoparietal area, which is where you're going to see some dyslexia issues. And, we kind of really worked on strengthening, this area of the brain. And it was amazing how much traction she gained. She went from hating reading and being in the lower levels to being completely at grade level and starting to really enjoy reading because it was no longer hard for her, and this is a really bright kid. She was, had high grades, except she struggled in this one area, and so, just by targeting that, and we were also targeting some other ADHD symptoms and some different things, but we also kind of went over and targeted that area as well. And we were shocked at how fast she responded. And the parents were thrilled because there's not been any, regression in this, since she got there. We got her up to speed, and now she's just doing great and coaxing along and enjoys reading now. And also her confidence has increased a ton. So it's just been amazing to see what that could do for her.
Dr. Heather, and the last question for you, can you highlight some of the learning disabilities that you treat and, walk us through what that's like when they come in the door?
Sure. I'd say the most common one is ADHD, followed by dyslexia, which is, difficulty with, reading and so forth. Dysgraphia is another one, which can be difficulty with some motor functioning, especially causing problems with writing. Dyscalculia, and so that's an impairment in an ability to understand and work with numbers. And dyspraxia is a little bit with more coordination, and so the ability to kind of plan and coordinate executive, and execute movements. And then we also have like auditory processing disorders, some sensory processing disorders, language processing disorders, just basic executive function struggles, or memory disorders. So it can be the whole gamut as far as the major learning disabilities. And like everything, we start with an EEG and we just look at that person's their brain and how it's communicating and what kind of sticks out as maybe kind of being the weak link in the chain, and we tend to focus on that. And then after and we track symptoms, and then we rescan, and then we kind of shift to the next thing until the symptoms resolved and everybody feels like we kind of got to where we want to go, and then clients graduate.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I really appreciate all the help that you're providing to all of these patients. It's really seems like a breakthrough.
It really can be.
So Dr. Heather, thank you again for walking us through how neurotherapy helps with learning disabilities. It's inspiring to hear how these approaches truly change the way people learn and thrive. And thank you again. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Transformative Neurotherapy Podcast with Dr. Heather Putney. Remember, your brain isn't supposed to hold you back. It's supposed to power you forward. So stop letting it crash your party and start letting it do its job. If you're ready to optimize brain health, sharpen your focus, and age like a fine wine, schedule your free consultation today at transformativeneurotherapy.org or call us at 412-204-7397. Because here, healing happens faster. See you next time.